fixed. It is rewired. It is saved. It should be good now forever. Well, maybe not forever. But maybe till the end of Mercury retrograde, till Mercury stations direct again. That would be awesome if this proved to be stable that long. I don't have an echo in my headphones. From what I can tell, the audio from the videos should come up perfectly clean and fine for you guys. From what I can tell, my voice should also be coming through perfectly clean and fine for you guys. But that's what I can tell. I guess I'll need to tune in. Usually I have Solomon here to tune in and confirm. I will just do it myself. That's what I'm going to do. You're going to hear an echo when I do that because I'm going to be listening on my phone and it's going to obviously repeat what the stream's saying. But I'm going to confirm it because that's the pro thing to do. That is the pro thing to do. Or you guys can confirm it for me, whichever. But let's see what I get going on my phone here. If I can get that and I can tell if there's audio, then I'll know. Okay, so I can hear my mic on my phone. That's a good sign. Let's make sure I can hear.
Behold the sign of the elements.
Okay, so I can hear my mic on my phone. Let's see.
Let's make sure I can hear. Colors.
Okay, so I can hear my mic on my phone. Let's make sure I can hear. Okay, we've got this. And there's some kind of infinite echo loop, but I think that may be taken care of. Hopefully you guys don't have an infinite echo loop. I think it's clear, though. When I was listening to it on my stream, it was looping, but I think that's because it was playing the stream into the mic and was actually making an infinite echo loop. But you guys confirm that you can hear me, and if you confirm that you can hear the video too, then we will be back to normal here. And these settings are saved, so they should hold. Last time I was not saving the settings just because I was messing around late at night to do a Sacred Scripture Circle. But this should be, at least I know my audio is coming in clean. And I don't think it's on an endless loop. If it is, I don't have any indication that it is. So it probably isn't. What's the prayer for getting this stuff to work again? It is actually casting out a particular demon by the name of Boyce. But also, I mean, Mercury's retrograde no matter what. that's not Boyce's fault. We're not going to blame him. All right, so now that I have Steven troubleshooting with me and we're live and direct, I'm going to once again attempt to hit play. From what I can tell, that should just play the video. You should be able to hear me. You should be able to hear the video. We should be all good.
The treasure of treasures for alchemists.
What do you guys think? Can you hear the video? Hear me? Again, from what I can tell, you should be able to hear us both quite fine.
By Matthew Schmitz.
Although my camera did shit out again.
In the bowels of the earth, there are two kinds of it, which are found in many districts of Europe. The best which has been offered to me, which also has been found genuine in experimentation, is externally in the figure of the greater world, and is in the eastern part of the sphere of the sun. The other, in the southern star, is now in its first efflorescence. The bowels of the earth thrust this forth through its surface.
All right, so Steven has confirmed you can hear me, hear the video. I think we got this fixed for good, and hopefully we never, ever, ever have to deal with that problem again. I will introduce this video just slightly as I did before on mute, so we actually have the whole thing. This is the actual, someone reading the actual book, The Treasure of Treasures for Alchemists by Paracelsus, by this character that we talked about yesterday, who is this intersection point of medicine, sort of the father of modern medicine, the last of the great alchemists, kind of known magician, and certainly he didn't see these things as separate. He kind of combined all these things together. So, this is his book about alchemy, and you see in this the beginning of pharmacy and sort of the culmination of magic. It becomes a very interesting artifact of a time. It becomes, this point, this turning point in the history of these studies. And we're going to look at kind of what he says here, unpack some of what he says, and then we'll dig into some other, just like we did yesterday, kind of dig around it to give it more context.
It is found red in its first coagulation, and in it lie hid all the flowers and colors of the minerals. Much has been written about it by the philosophers, for it is of a cold and moist nature, and agrees with the element of water. So far as relates to the knowledge of it and experiment with it, all the philosophers before me, though they have aimed at.
Now, I want to put this in context for anyone who's taken any of my classes on herbal extraction or things like that. I don't put it in these traditional spagyric terms, but we've talked about how, like, when you boil something in water, it extracts the water-soluble components. So when he's talking about it agrees with the element of water, that's what he's talking about, as opposed to oily stuff, which doesn't agree with it, right? They separate. So what he's understanding is that when we apply energy to things, when we apply heat to things, they begin to break down in a very specific way. The smoke the water comes off. Then when it's dry, it starts to smoke. Then when it's after that, it starts to release the rest of it as sort of energy. And that's what he's going to describe here. He's going to use a lot of fancy terms for it, but that's basically what he's describing. If you've ever, gotten something really, 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 really hot and put a vegetable on there and seen how the steam comes off and then it starts to scorch and smoke and eventually burn, that's what he's showing us. If you've ever grilled meat, that's basically what he's describing. And he's going to talk about how to kind of intentionally work this process to produce different results.
At it with their missiles have gone very wide of the mark. They believed that mercury and sulfur were the mother of all metals, never even dreaming of making mention, meanwhile, of a third. And yet, when the water is separated from it by spagyric art, the truth is plainly revealed, though it was unknown to Galen or to Avicenna. But if, for the sake of our excellent physicians, we had to describe only the name, the composition, the dissolution and coagulation, as in the beginning of the world, nature proceeds with all growing things, a whole year would scarcely suffice me, and, in order to explain these things, not even the skins of numerous cows would be adequate. Now, I assert that in this mineral are found three principles, which are mercury, sulfur, and the mineral water, which has served to naturally coagulate it. Spagyric science is able to extract this from its proper juice when it is not altogether matured, in the middle of the autumn, just like a pear from a tree. The tree potentially contains the pear if the celestial stars and nature agree. The tree, first of all, puts forth shoots in the month of March. Then it thrusts out buds, and when these open the flower appears, and so on in due order until in autumn the pear grows ripe. So is it with the minerals. These are born in like manner in the bowels of the earth.
So again, you got to think about the time when this is all going down. You got to think about the context for all of this. And what Paracelsus is talking about here is that minerals, right, in the bowel of the earth, whether we're talking about gold, etc., that they happen over time. Now, where views have come to change a little bit is now we see minerals as growing, but his point is that there's a progression from one state to the next, and in actuality, whether that happens in the bowels of the earth or not is not necessarily determined, but it definitely happens in the sun. That's what we've confirmed now scientifically. Ah! Was that it? Kunoichi Kitsune. You just did it. You just did it. We just hit 150. That's 150 follows. I will be scheduling psilocybin and tarot within the next 48 hours. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Fox Spirit. I will continue here.
The earth. Let the alchemists who are seeking the treasure of treasures carefully note this. I will show them the way, its beginning, its middle, and its end. In the following treatise, I will describe the proper water, the proper sulfur, and the proper balm thereof. By means of these three, the resolution and composition are coagulated into one. Concerning the sulfur of cinnabar.
Now, let's just talk real quick about why cinnabar is important. Number one, if you have any like traditional Chinese statues that are kind of that red, dark red color, that's cinnabar. So it was used for traditional crafts, etc. Cinnabar is also the natural source of elemental mercury. Like if you want that liquid mercury, the metal mercury, it's in cinnabar, and that's basically where you get it from. I like to think that it bubbled up out of the earth in some cool way. Unfortunately, that's not where it comes from. You have to extract it in a process like this from cinnabar. Now, again, let's go back in our minds to before there was a science of chemistry and all that, and think about like, yeah, you did a bunch of stuff to this wood, and you've now collected sort of by separating everything that was of a, in some way or another, whether you're going by size or volatility or whatever, you've separated everything that's different from that one aspect of it, and you've gotten that to collect, so you have like a pure mercury, as it were, like pure liquid mercury. And if you guys have never, I could show a video of what quicksilver looks like, but just trust me, it looks like, you know, liquid silver pouring around. The fact that you could do something to wood and end up with liquid silver, like a liquid mirror, is pretty nuts, right? Like it's something that I think, without the context of everything we're talking about, seems like the purest type of pure magic that you could even possibly imagine. So let's continue.
Take mineral cinnabar and prepare it in the following manner. Cook it with rainwater in a stone vessel for 3 hours. Then purify it carefully and dissolve it in aqua regis, which is composed of equal parts of vitriol, nitre, and sol ammoniac. Another formula is vitriol, saltpeter, alum, and common salt.
I also want to point out how this is, and I'm just going to let this video rock after I point this out. Wow, I'm not just going to let it rock. You know I'm going to have so much commentary. Think of how, on the one hand, this sounds way more so far like a magical spell than a chemistry recipe, right? If you ever taken a chemistry class, ever done a spell, what does this sound like? It sounds like a spell, but he's doing chemistry.
Distill this in an alembic. Pour it on again and separate carefully the pure from the impure thus. Let it putrefy for a month in horse dung. Then separate the elements in the following manner. If it puts forth its sign, commence the distillation by means of an alembic with a fire of the first degree.
Why are we putrefying this in horse dung? Anyone want to take a guess? I have my theories, and I think research will show that when we putrefy something in horse dung, the bacteria are going to eat up all the organic compounds in there. If we're trying to get, say, at the mercury in cinnabar, we need to eat away a lot of organic compounds that make up the wood. So the bacteria are going to go ahead and eat up a lot of those organic compounds, so it does a lot of the work that we're later going to, gives us less to refine, it gives us less to work from, brings us closer to our final state. We don't have a lot of these organic compounds hanging around. I wish Solomon was here, because he actually has a degree or a partial degree in chemistry, but I'll ask him when he gets here.
The water and the air will ascend. The fire and the earth will remain at the bottom.
All right. Again, this sounds like a magic spell, but he's talking about chemistry. The water and the air will ascend. What happens? So let's say you've taken this wood, this cinnabar, you've gone through this process, you've cooked it in this certain way, you've put it in horse dung, horse poop, and let it sit for a month. Then you're putting it back in this like glass container, glass pot, basically, boiling it again. What's going to happen? Well, you're boiling it, right? You're applying heat. So what's going to happen? Steam's going to rise. And some of that's going to come as a vapor, right? Like a straight up air, the gaseous form. And some of it's going to be a liquid that's going to condense on there, right? The water. So you're going to see that come up. It's going to bubble. That's the water ascending, or the air ascending, excuse me. And then the vapor is going to raise, right? So the water and the air will ascend. And the type of vessel they're talking about is called an alembic. Imagine my coffee cup here, and imagine if I had a little straw coming out of the spout, and that came down in another vessel. So the steam basically rises up and goes into like another, not basically the most excited compounds actually, because it's the water and the air, right? It goes up that little thin part, and then it goes through some twists, and when it does that, it cools down, turns back into a liquid, and drips into the other side. So on the one hand, you're going to remove it from this vessel, and on the other hand, you're going to kind of separate it into another vessel. And that's what he's describing there. And then he's talking about the earth and the fire remain in the bottom. Well, again, if go through this mental experiment. You've taken this piece of wood and the poop, right? Now you're heating it up. So what's going to happen? The water, eventually all the water is going to boil off, and then it's dry. And when it's dry and you keep heating it, then it's going to start to smolder like a coal, right? So that's the fire, the smoldering part, that energetic potential, what we call calories in food. And then the actual stuff, the remaining carbon, just like the char that's left, that's the earth, right? And so that process of the bacteria breaking it down is separating a lot of those bonds from that carbon, making it easier, I think. Let me continue.
Afterwards, join them again and gradually treat with the ashes, so the water and the air will again ascend first, and afterwards the element of fire, which expert artists recognize.
So what is he talking about here? He's saying separate them out into those two, heat it up till you just have, the smoldering coal in here and the steam that you've cooked all of off out here. And he said, now mix it back together. Why would he say mix it back together? What is he talking about? Oh, I still have coffee. Good. You mix it back together because he's actually using, it's very clever, he's using that solution, that thing that's gone from the cup to over here, as a solvent, okay? As a solvent, because like attracts like in chemistry, right? So when you put that back through the ashes, any bit of it that was left, residual trace amounts, will certainly dissolve into that much greater concentration that's in the separate vessel, okay? So he says mix them back together, right? And then heat it up again, so the water and the air will ascend first, right? So it boils, basically. And then what? And afterward, the element of fire, which expert artists recognize. So what is he saying about that? You actually see the last of the energetic capacity, the last of the heat capacity leave. You can't necessarily see it, you just know when it's happened, right? And then what's left is kind of, doesn't matter how much you heat it, it's not going to burn anymore, okay? He says the earth will remain in the bottom of the vessel. This collect there. It is what many seek after and few find. I have a feeling, and I've never run through this particular extraction with cinnabar, but I have a feeling that wouldn't be mercury, liquid mercury, because all that heat would definitely drive that off. So I don't know, is the ashes of this process that he's saying has extreme value. So he said you will prepare it according to the rules of the art. Well, keep playing it.
The earth will remain in the bottom of the vessel. This collected there. It is what many seek after and few find. This dead earth, in the reverberatory, you will prepare according to the rules of art, and afterwards add fire of the first degree for 5 days and nights. When these have elapsed, you must apply the second degree for the same number of days and nights.
So you're putting increasing heat on this thing, right? Fire of the first degree, think of like a first degree burn, right? So you're at fire of the first degree for 5 days, and you're basically driving off very slowly. Again, anyone who's seen me make oil or seen me do any of my plant work, the ideal case is to drive off very slowly and gradually your undesirable compounds. And that's what he's doing here, very slowly and gradually driving it off. Everything kind of layer by layer is being progressively vaporized until just the purest essence is left.
And proceed according to art with the material enclosed. At length you will find a volatile salt, like a thin alkali, containing in itself the astrum of fire and earth. Mix this with the two elements that have been preserved, the water and the earth. Again, place it on the ashes for 8 days and 8 nights, and you will find that which has been neglected by many artists.
Again, a huge amount just got covered there, okay? So what he's saying is you're kind of refining the 3 parts, or you've boiled off this one part, you're setting that aside. That's what he's talking about as far as the, let me rewind it a little. So join the element of fire and salt to the alkalized earth. Oh, sorry, I went a little too far back there. Oh, no, that's it. Digest in the pelican. 8 days and 8 nights. Sorry, I'm not back far enough. So he says, mix this. So you're going to get from that process of progressively heating that we described as the period over 10 days. You get this, what he calls a volatile salt, right? Like a thin alkali. So some kind of powder. You think of baking soda, that's alkali, right? Like a very thin powder. It says containing in itself the astrum of fire and earth. So kind of the essence of fire and earth. He says, mix this with the two elements that have been preserved, the water and the earth. What is that? The water is what you had boiled off before, and that aqueous portion. And I'm not sure, I guess he did not describe at any point boiling the water off of that and just leaving an extract. So you have that sort of steam distillation of this thing. And the earth is all the other physical parts that got cooked off. And you're remixing this. So what you're effectively doing is taking it apart into its three major constituents and cleaning up all the edges. Cleaning off everything that doesn't neatly fit in any one of those sort of ideal groups, removing it from the mix, and then mixing those ideal parts back together. Okay?
Thin alkali, containing in itself the astrum of fire and earth. Again, place it on the ashes for 8 days and 8 nights.
On the ashes means on the fire.
And you will find that which has been neglected by many artists. Separate this according to your experience and according to the rules of the spagyric art, and you will have a white earth, from which its color has been extracted. Join the element of fire and...
Again, he's talking about the same processes. There's only so many pieces of equipment, and I can pull down some of my alchemy books and we can look at them, that are being used over and over and over and over here. And the process is then reapplied to sort of a finer and finer extraction to clean it up. And as a result, you kind of remove what they presume is impurities, but sort of the intermediary compounds.
Salt to the alkalized earth. Digest in a pelican to extract the essence.
And of course, a pelican is a piece of glassware. It's not an actual bird he's talking about.
Then a new earth will be deposited, which put aside. Concerning the red lion. Afterwards, take the lion in the pelican, which also is found at first, when you see its tincture, that is to say, the element of fire which stands above the water, the air, and the earth.
So he's talking about this thing called the red lion, big deal in alchemy. The element of fire is standing above the water, the air, and the earth. So in some way, the heat is at the top of the vessel. It's a little unclear. The other thing I want to say is, so when you look at all the alchemical art, and actually maybe I'll let this thing rock and grab some books to show you guys pictures, it draws all these symbols, and by the symbols, they're referring to the text, and by the text, they're referring to these different techniques that I'm sharing with you guys. So give me one sec here. So here's one alchemy book, and I'll just do a little camera switch, just to kind of show you guys what I'm talking about here, and we'll continue presently with Paracelsus. So, cool. So, book here is The Art of the Alchemist by Berland. It was 50 cents UK when it was published. It's a big hardcover, so I'm going to guess it's kind of old. Let's see. I have 1967 as a publication date. It's pretty decent. Can you guys see it? Dedication page? Yeah. It's in hieroglyphics to the memory of the priestess of the hidden one, it says. Let me see if I can adjust the camera so these pages show a little bit better, because there's some cool stuff in here. And, if you can't see the details, it's not going to communicate any of the point I'm trying to communicate. Turn down the brightness. Turn down the gamma a little. Turn up the saturation a little. And turn up the contrast a little. Okay. That's a little better. Cool. So I'm going to show you some of the pictures in the book. Trying to find some of the good full color ones that I think will show up good on the camera here. Well, so you see things like this, right? See if this shows. Can I get it just? Let me see if I can turn the camera and do it. I'll put it over here. Sort of. It shows like all these different weird spirits in and around the equipment here, like the just different lab equipment. See what else I can find. Well, here's one. Okay, this kind of takes you through the stage we're talking about here. Here, the solar lion. Hopefully this shows up. So they kind of make this tableau where the lion, they were just talking about the red lion, that you've reached that stage when the heat, the energy stays at the top above, what do you say?
Separate fire which stands above the water, the air, and the earth.
Right, so literally think about, taking a 2-liter bottle of soda or half full of water, putting that over heat, and it's going to separate, and there's going to be a hierarchy of where the air is and where, I guess if you have some salt or something in there, so you have some earth, and then where the water is. And what's crazy here is now this is weirdly inverted. The heat is at the top of this thing. You've reached a point where nothing else is burning anymore. Okay, it's kind of just the flame rises to the top of the whole mixture.
Separated from its deposit by trituration. Thus you will have the true aurum potabile. Sweeten this with the alcohol of
Aurum is gold, so this is the essence of gold, he's saying.
Wine poured over it, and then distill in an alembic until you perceive no acidity to remain in the aqua regia. This oil of the sun enclosed in a retort, hermetically sealed, you must place for elevation that it may be exalted and doubled in its degree. Then put the vessel, still closely shut, in a cool place. Thus it will not be dissolved, but coagulated. Place it again for elevation and coagulation, and repeat this 3 times. Thus will be produced the tincture of the sun, perfect in its degree. Keep this in its own place. Concerning the green lion, take the vitriol of Venus, carefully prepared according to the rules of spagyric art, and add thereto the elements of water and air which you have reserved. Resolve and set to putrefy for a month according to instructions. When the putrefaction is finished, you will behold the sign of the elements. Separate, and you will soon see the 2 colors, namely white and red. The red is above the white. The red tincture of the vitriol is so powerful that it reddens all white bodies and whitens all red ones, which is wonderful. Work upon this tincture by means of a retort, and you will perceive a blackness issue forth. Treat it again by means of the retort, repeating the operation until it comes out whitish. Go on, and do not despair of the work. Rectify until you find the true, clear, green lion, which you will recognize by its great weight. You will see that it is heavy and large. This is the tincture, transparent gold. You will see marvelous signs of this green lion, such as could be bought by no treasures of the Roman Leo. Happy he who has learnt how to find it and use it for a tincture. This is the true and genuine balsam, the balsam of the heavenly stars, suffering no bodies to decay, nor allowing leprosy, gout, or dropsy to take root. It is given in a dose of 1 grain, if it has been fermented with sulfur of gold. Ah, Charles the German.
So he's talking about making medicine here, right? He's talking about making this extremely concentrated, powerful medicine. And that's the intention. The fact that he mentions gold in association with the sun, and he's very speaking, metaphysically, got a lot of people interested in alchemy as the art of making gold. And of course, in theory, as he said, this happens with all minerals of the earth. This can be done in that sense. That's not what he was talking about. That's not the focus of the process.
Where is your treasure? Where are your philosophers? Where your doctors? Where are your decoctors of woods, who at least purge and relax? Is your heaven reversed? Have your stars wandered out of their course, and are they straying in another orbit, away from the line of limitation, since your eyes are smitten with blindness as by a carbuncle, and other things making a show of ornament, beauty, and pomp? If your artists only knew that their Prince Galen, they call none like him.
He's basically just talking shit about the existing experts in the field.
Was sticking in hell, from whence he has sent letters to me. They would make the sign of the cross upon themselves with a fox's tail. In the same way your Avicenna sits in the vestibule of the infernal portal, and I have disputed with him about his aurum portobile, his tincture of the philosophers, his quintessence and philosopher's stone, his mithridatic, his theriac, and all the rest. O you hypocrites who despise the truths taught.
So he's basically like, listen, I've spoken with the spirits of all the existing masters. I get where they're at, and they're wrong about a bunch of stuff.
By a true physician, who is himself instructed by nature, and is a son of God himself. Come then, and listen, impostors, who prevail only by the authority of your high positions. After my death, my disciples will burst forth and drag you to the light, and shall expose your dirty drugs, wherewith, up to this time, you have compassed the death of princes, and the most invincible magnates of the Christian world. Woe for your necks in the day of judgment. I know that the monarchy will be mine. Mine, too, will be the honor and glory. Not that I praise myself. Nature praises me. Of her I am born. Her I follow. She knows me, and I know her.
So obviously he's pretty big on himself.
Light which is in her, I have beheld in her. Outside, too, I have proved the same in the figure of the microcosm.
But he's like a much less humble George Washington Carver. He's just kind of talking about this deep intuitive knowledge of nature and how nature is composed.
And found it in that universe. But I must proceed with my design in order to satisfy my disciples to the full extent of their wish. I willingly do this for them, if only skilled in the light of nature and thoroughly practiced in astral matters, they finally become adepts in philosophy, which enables them to know the nature of every kind.
It's also inherently frustrating that the words and the text and the audio aren't matched up anymore. So there's nothing I can do about
Kind of water. Take then of this liquid of the minerals which I have described, 4 parts by weight, of the earth, of red soul, 2 parts, of sulfur of soul, 1 part. Put these together in a pelican, congelate, and dissolve them 3 times. Thus you will have the tincture of the alchemists. We have not here described its weight, but this is given in the book on transmutations. So now, he who has 1 to 1,000 ounces of the astrum solis shall also tinge his own body of soul. If you have the astrum of Mercury, in the same manner you will tinge the whole body of common Mercury. If you have the astrum of Venus, you will, in like manner, tinge the whole body of Venus and change it into the best metal. These facts have all been proved. The same must also be understood as to the astra of the other planets, as Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Luna, and the rest. For tinctures are also prepared from these, concerning which we now make no mention in this place, because we have already dwelt at sufficient length upon them in the book on the nature of things, and in the Archidoxes. So too, the first entity of metals and terrestrial minerals have been made, sufficiently clear for alchemists to enable them to get the alchemist's tincture. This work, the tincture of the alchemists, need not be one of 9.
So I'm going to stop it there, because from there he's just going to go into the notes, and it's their footnotes, and it won't make any sense. There's no, linear thing there. But again, we have Paracelsus as this figure that stands right at this crossroads of alchemy, medicine, and magic. What he's described there is a alchemical procedure. Hopefully in the next couple of years here, I'll get the equipment and run through some of this stuff. I actually want to do that stuff live on stream. These are the quote-unquote mysteries of alchemy that people wonder about, right? It's all a series of operations being performed. The result are these end compounds, and you can actually find here. Let's actually look together. There's people who have the equipment who are doing it, right here and now on Instagram. Let's see if I can find. Not a ton of people, but there definitely are people. Let me pull it up and share screen with you. All right, so a bunch of this stuff is crap. Is not what I'd be looking for. But, well, now here, this is interesting. Like making essential oils, like stuff I do, does not reach this level of precise art. Even stuff like that other people are doing, that's oil and stuff. But when they're doing stuff like this here, now this is interesting. This is extracting the salts, the mineral salts from something. A lot of different crystals being extracted. So here's like a setup, right? So you have heating, different types of distillation, cooling. This is a very basic setup. This setup is actually pretty inexpensive. But so here's I don't really know this person or what they're doing, so I'm just kind of looking for other pictures. It's a very elementary setup, right? But you can do some pretty crazy stuff. Here, there's an extraction. It's just the degree of accuracy you can get is more than you can really get with like my setup, which is, I do pretty good. But having it sealed and being able to control the temperature for a long period of time, that's got a lot to do with it. Here, this one even, you can kind of see. Let's see what else these people got. All these different things being separated in stages. Right? There's different plants being run through different processes, or really the same process at different stages in it. Here you have the salts, you have the different oils, you have all these things, right? So when you look at it and see the end result of these processes, it kind of starts to make sense. And if you've run stuff before, if you've extracted plants and run extractions, you've kind of seen a lot of these steps. So yeah, that's alchemy. I don't know if that was more or less exciting than anyone ever expected, but that's it. That's alchemy. So yeah, the hope is, as I click the button that says host scene, the hope is that within the next couple of years, we'll have that whole equipment set up for the temple, and literally anyone can come use it. It's, it would be an open public space. Obviously you got to get trained on it and clean up after yourself and all that good stuff, but it's available to use and be trained on and stuff like that. Now, the interesting thing is, because when we start thinking in spiritual terms, we start thinking in metaphoric terms, how all this also applies to a spiritual process. And that's often discussed, that the true goal of the alchemist is personal, right? Is a level of personal perfection, refining oneself in the way one refines these plants. And that's where alchemy kind of verges even more into a spiritual discipline. And that's where I think things get confusing. And again, if the theory holds true, if the theory is true, right? If the principles that alchemists are working on are true, then that follows, right? It should be that it should work for everything if it's really truly fundamentally law of the universe type stuff. So, with that said, I know I got more video. Let me find more video. That's the one we watched yesterday. That's our meditation beat. That's just some other stuff. So, I don't remember what else I wanted to show you guys. Oh, well, I found this. So this is a kind of a weird talk. It's only kind of weird. First of all, it's 48 minutes. It's a it's a lecture. Wow. A lecture by Professor E.H. Iwailo Schmidt, BGU, delivered in 2014 during a medical conference. He's a leading scholar on Paracelsus, and he's going to talk a little more about it. Now, he delivers the lecture in German, and there's someone translating it in English. It's a little weird, is what it is. The audio is good, though. The English is much more clear. The translation's good. It's not very accented. It's easy to understand, but you'll realize there's like something going on in the background, and it's actually this talk in German. It is about 48 minutes. I do intend to kind of air the whole thing, unless you guys stringently object and want to get right into meditation. The video on the history of magical healing, Dr. Cosmic asks for. I am not sure which one that would be, but I have this one queued up. So we're going to do this one, and then I will see what that. I'm going to dig through my YouTube history on my phone while we watch this one.
Professor Vogel has already mentioned that we want to know our history, because only if we know our history, Hildegard von Bingen and others, can we derive conclusions from this and expand and enhance our existing knowledge. I'm looking forward to the presentation by Professor Dr. Schmidt on the secrets of Paracelsus medicine. It is particularly exciting for us because learning from the past means finding new paths
Hold on, though, because the audio was out. The audio was out that whole time. I don't understand. I do not understand how we got that far in that whole thing without audio. 7 minutes. I know what happened, you guys. I know what happened. I did it when I put it on the speaker so Solomon could hear. He's really been enjoying it, by the way.
It's really good. It's really good.
He's really been enjoying it. Gosh, guys. All right. I'm glad I checked. I'm glad only one person appears to have dropped out. I can fix this. Bear with me. Streamlabs setting. Audio. Desktop audio device 1 needs to be speakers Realtek audio. And this should do it, guys. Thank you for being chill. Hey, more people are tuning in. Perfect timing. I just figured out how to stream, everyone. There you go. Now, I'm gonna bring it back. He was really making some awesome points. It was deep. I'll bring it to here. So we're only gonna have to rewatch 5 minutes of that, but it works. I believe. I'm actually gonna stay here, eye on the chat while this plays in the background, until you guys say, "Hey, that sounds great."
Since during the next hour, I will be taking you on a journey through the history of medicine in the Middle Ages, I would like to begin with a brief introduction. With consideration for today's knowledge in the field of natural science, I'm of course not a total follower of the thinking that I'll be presenting now. Yet on the other hand, I would like to ask you, why should we take the time in our modern days to concern ourselves with Paracelsus, a doctor from the Middle Ages? Recent studies show that in Germany people are being issued with 6 certificates for mental disorders for a total of 54 million days. 10 years ago this figure was only 20 million days. 2 million people are taking psychoactive drugs at their workplace to cope with the effects of daily stress.
I know there's a little echo there because I unmuted my mic, but I just want you guys to let me know that the audio volume and all that other stuff is good. If it is, I'll shut up and we'll play. If it's not, tell me too loud, too quiet, can't hear it, nothing. Right now it's paused, so nothing. But I'll play again and you tell me. Cool, dope. I'll make it a little bit louder. I think I can push the volume a little bit on the output before it gets too loud. Okay, cool.
The prescription of psychoactive drugs among students has increased by 54% in the last 5 years. And these people are our future, our intellectual future. The drug that is prescribed most often is methylphenidate, also known under its trade name of Ritalin. In the last 20 years, the amount of prescribed Ritalin has increased 50-fold. The pharmaceutical industry is presently spending less and less money on research for psychoactive drugs, since it is lacking any real breakthroughs and there are also none in sight. Many centuries ago, Paracelsus wrote that we all have an inner healer. You only have to ask for his help. He wrote that a physician should only intervene from the outside when the healer within has exhausted his means. In our modern age, many people have forgotten how to listen to their own physical symptoms. Quite to the contrary, these are being suppressed with drugs so that even alarm symptoms are no longer being noticed. Paracelsus was a polymath, someone whose expertise spanned a significant number of different subject areas, a phenomenon which we unfortunately no longer encounter today. Universities were once established so that the complete knowledge of mankind could be taught and academic research carried out freely and independently. In every university, philosophy was the overriding subject that was meant to investigate ethical issues and link the different disciplines together and act as an intermediary. This meant that the philosophers had to deal with the main fields of natural science. At the same time, they would also study mysticism and apply it. Paracelsus wrote about this as follows: "Whoever has not studied philosophy will make as good a physician as a chimney sweep will make a baker's hand." End of quote. Yet through the age of the so-called Enlightenment, our present-day worldview has become more and more set on so-called material facts. This is why today we believe in objective research and practice the reductionism established by René Descartes. He proposed that if an object is complicated enough, we should take it apart in order to examine it better. We should take the individual parts apart until we get to a level that is no longer divisible. On the face of it, one would think that through this elemental breakdown method, Descartes would have been able to tell us exactly how we are to understand the secrets of life and thus the laws of nature. Yet, with its reductionism, which remains socially acceptable today, science has only created a further problem. It not only places itself above the laws of nature, but it also often is unable to keep track of things. Here I'm specifically thinking of the trend toward specialization. In his book Novum Organum, the Englishman Francis Bacon coined the famous phrase, "Knowledge is power." With this he meant that we should get to know nature, make it our own, and exploit it for the benefit of humankind. In order to do this consistently, we must look at nature as being something separate from us. As a human being, I'm, so to say, stepping outside of nature, I'm standing opposite of it, and from then on, I'm an observer or also an experimenter. Scientists therefore consider themselves to be objective researchers standing outside of nature and thus also outside of their experiments. They are thus neglecting their own influence. Objective science demands reproducible results under the same conditions. Yet how are we to do this in the field of medicine if our patients and we as therapists are actually all unique individuals? This is exactly the problem that we have in homeopathy. Along with the material, we should not neglect the mental aspect. After all, polarity signifies mutuality. It denotes a wholeness that is located between the poles. Polarity also means that we must observe the balance that can arise between the poles. If a person loses his or her balance, he will get into a state of duality. If in the process one side prevailed and one gets into a state of one-sidedness, a deficiency will arise on the other side. We should never forget this in our considerations. In everyday medical and academic life, there's hardly any room for such thoughts. Today, many researchers are carrying out project-related work, which means that they're under enormous time pressure and pressure to succeed. Seen from the outside, natural science would appear to be quite clear, logical, and comprehensible. Yet, from a purely materialistic perspective, how can such wonders as jellyfish have developed in the sea? They are living examples of how misconceived today's concept of matter actually is. Seawater consists of 97% water, with the remaining 3% being salts, other organic compounds, and pollution. However, jellyfish consists of 99.9% water, meaning that only 0.1% of it consists of organic and inorganic compounds. Yet jellyfish still multiply, they move about and metabolize, and they even shine in the dark of the deep ocean if they belong to the family that is commonly known in Europe as moth stingers. These jellyfish shine even though they only consist of 0.1% organic and inorganic substance. Human beings have more than 10 to the power of 13 cells. Under normal conditions, approximately 100,000 chemical reactions will take place in a cell each second. Likewise, 10 to the power of 7 cells die each second and are usually replaced. This complex system has to be regulated and, more important, controlled.
So back here in the peanut gallery, we're having a conversation because he just went over that fact very quickly. Like, why is it a big deal that jellyfish exist in the ocean? And as I said, well, they're more dilute than the ocean. Like, how is that possible? That what do you say? Jellyfish are 99% water?
99.9%.
And the ocean is 95%. 97% water. Thank you. I needed you before when I was poorly explaining chemistry. That's weird that they're alive, though, and the ocean's not. And, you know, what we looked at yesterday in terms of that field, that primary bioelectric field that kind of constitutes the blueprint into which our bodies grow, I think starts to explain some of that. Let's see what this guy, who clearly knows way more about this stuff than me, says.
A human cell has an average volume of 10 to the power of 9 cubic centimeters. How can a chemist ever expect to analyze what is actually taking place in such a cell? He can really only use reductionism and investigate certain parts. In other words, the scientific accessibility of these processes is only very minimal. Professor Fritz Albert Popp commented on this as follows: "Nature with its possibilities is far superior to our analytical means. Reality is so complex that we can only hope to understand a fractional part of what we observe. A scientist should accept that he or she will be unable to understand a large part of the world, yet often demands are being made which in this respect cannot be justified. The Nobel Prize winner Robert Koch is still being honored in Germany, even though neither his first tuberculonium from 1819 nor his second one from 1897 proved to be effective. No less a figure than the renowned physician Rudolf Virchow proved that patients treated with tuberculonium showed higher concentration of pathogens than other patients that had not been treated. Koch assumed that the pathogens were enemies, and he declared war on them. This position is being supported to the very day. Professor Enderlein, a contemporary of Koch, who is no longer being heeded, today said, not the pathogens are decisive, but it's rather the milieu that is decisive. This also corresponded with the thinking of Paracelsus. Pathogens only have a chance in an organism that is already ill and damaged. Paracelsus was not only a doctor, but also a natural scientist, a mystic, a prophet, an astrologist, a magician, and an alchemist.
So that was like a really big point that we got to get into, that the bacteria and stuff is the symptom. The fact that you have, this is the idea saying here. I'm not giving medical advice. I'm not a doctor. I'm an old fool just playing YouTube videos. But what they're saying is the bacteria or the virus, the fact that it can enter there, the fact that it gathers there, the fact that it proliferates there, is the result of a basic illness. Now, remember what we saw yesterday, not about Paracelsus, but that conference on bioinformatics that we saw last year presented by the dude who runs that institute at Tufts University, where he said, yeah, we can see the tumor in the energy before it physically appears in the body. These sound kind of similar, no?
Whereby he allowed the individual fields to merge into each other. He was unpopular among his medical colleagues because his wartime experiences enabled him to work as an outstanding surgeon, something which was usually left to field surgeons and barbers in those days. He was also unpopular among chemists because he did not trust them and preferred to prepare his own medicines. Paracelsus was born near Einsiedl in Switzerland. Interesting to note in this regard is that, like his mother, during his lifetime, he was actually a bondservant of the local monastery, even though his father belonged to Swabian nobility. His father worked both as a lecturer at a mining school and as a practitioner with his own doctor's surgery. Apart from medicine from his father, Paracelsus also learned mining and how to work with minerals. As a physician and mining engineer, Paracelsus' father mainly also taught his son how to make bioavailable medicines such as aurum potable, the famous drinkable gold. Paracelsus' birth house was located on St. James's Way, the popular pilgrimage route leading to Santiago de Compostela. The town, famous for the Black Madonna, has already attracted many thousands of pilgrims in those days. Here we now see the monastery in Switzerland, in Einsiedeln. It's a very famous pilgrimage place for the Swiss. The Black Madonna in the monastery. Over there, where the memorial plaque once stood, now stands the house where Paracelsus spent his childhood. We can also see the bridge leading to Etzel Mountain, which already existed back then and which was part of the pilgrimage route. This memorial plaque is the only reminder of Paracelsus remaining in the town. Otherwise, the memory of Paracelsus is hardly being kept alive there. After the death of his mother, Paracelsus and his father settled in Villach in Carinthia in 1502. Most likely the mysterious abbot John Trithemius and Agrippa von Nettesheim were his teachers. Sigmund Fugger, an alchemist and the owner of the largest copper and silver mining company in Austria and Hungary, was also one of his mentors. From 1509 to 1515, Paracelsus studied medicine at German, Italian, and French universities. Of course, I can't really show you pictures and what the lecture halls looked like in those days, but here is an authentic proof from Prague. Paracelsus, therefore, also spent some time in Prague, and this was the oldest lecture hall of those days, just to give you an impression. And here you can see how closely the humanities and religion were once connected with natural science at the universities. Here we see a pin from that time with an original library, also from Prague. You could say that Prague is the oldest university town in Europe.
Bloß, dass Sie mal einen Eindruck davon haben. Und hier sieht man also auch, wie Geisteswissenschaft und Glauben mit der Naturwissenschaft verknüpft waren einst in der Universität. Hier sehen wir mal einen Stich aus der Zeit mit einer Originalbibliothek, ebenfalls aus Prag. Prag ist ja die älteste Universitätsstadt in Europa, kann man sagen.
Paracelsus also spent some time in Leipzig, like Hahnemann was to do much later. But Ferrara, a town in Italy where he did his doctorate in internal medicine and surgery, was where he studied the longest. After that, he traveled through all of Europe as a journeyman until 1524. Of this time, we find the following account in his writings. I met more than 80 peasants who compared herbs with diseases just because of their shape and structure, and they used them in front of my eyes in a wonderful way, and it was a great help. On closer consideration, the surest art of healing almost always comes to us from ordinary and plain people.
Stop. Pause on that. Again, while we're relating magic and medicine, magic and science here. That's what we call the doctrine of signatures. Anyone who took Hoodoo Academy with me, Dr. Cosmic, anyone who's done this stuff, totally understands. We make that connection as to the spiritual virtues of a plant, too. The physical shape, the spiritual virtues. They're talking about the physical shape, the healing virtues. Naturally, there's a connection between the spiritual virtues, the healing virtues.
If all such experience would be put to writing in one single book, without being falsified by formulas and apothecaries, this would be dearer to me than all the commentaries of Gallenus and Avicenna. End of quote. In 1542, Paracelsus worked in Salzburg as a physician and also ran a laboratory business where he processed natural substances. The medicines that were produced in this way and the associated production processes are referred to as iatrochemistry. Today, Paracelsus is considered as being the founder of this science, but he was also a church reformer like Luther, who was a contemporary of Paracelsus. He held his service by practicing Christian love and through his practical work with patients. Here I would like to cite Paracelsus. I claim and say that it is more beneficial to wash the health and defects of the poor and bandage their wounds than to be standing at Mass to blare in the prime and the terce, in the Vespers and the Compline. You say I'm unchristian and I'm acting against Christian faith. Yet I've taken this from Christ who said, "Thou shalt eat, drink, and clothe," whereby he was not thinking of Mass. End of quote. The fact that Paracelsus saw his church service in his practical deeds and that he was an adherent of the teaching of reincarnation also meant that he was constantly being persecuted by the Catholic Church. His exhumation in the 1960s revealed that he had died a violent death, as his skull had been completely smashed. However, to really understand Paracelsus and his work, we must now look at medieval terminology. What do we know today about alchemy? Most of us think of the art of making gold. Yet, alchemy used to be called alchemia, and it originated from Egypt. Today, it is practically only still being used in India. This general chemistry was the predecessor of today's organic and inorganic chemistry and the basis for making complex and extremely effective medicines, the like of which we can only dream of today. Here, plants, minerals, and metals are purified through a complicated separation method and amalgamated with the help of special catalysts to make them as effective as possible for humans and animals. The concepts of alchemy may initially appear confusing to the uninitiated. For example, the extracted alcohol is called mercury, the essential oils are called sulfur, and the water-insoluble salts are called caput mortuum, literally meaning dead head, or worthless remains. The swan is a flask with a long neck, and the alchemist's furnace is called athanor. We will now look at the practical implications of this process. Since alchemists were constantly being persecuted, they passed on their knowledge by using symbols a lot, also through poems. Here we see a typical picture of a laboratory scene. What you also see here at the bottom right is a musical instrument. My teacher, the last great alchemist, Professor Manfred Junius, was a professor for Indian music and a professor for medicine. We always played music during the alchemical processes that we performed. This is a picture that I like very much. In the print, we can see the following. Here, nature is progressing. And this here at the back is the picture that was meant for the alchemists. Well, the picture is quite blurred, but this alchemist has very thick glasses. He has great difficulty seeing, and it is only with difficulty that he's following the footsteps of nature. At the same time, he's carrying this bull's eye lantern to light up his path somewhere a bit. This practically symbolizes the alchemist. Here we see some relationship between heavenly bodies and medicinal plants and metals. But that is just a very, very small selection. Here in the example of the Soluna Remedies Company, we can see that astrology, astronomy, and alchemy belong together. How could it be otherwise? We also see these symbols again on the old jars used by chemist shops. Here in this case sulfur. Well, here it isn't the actual sulfur that is being referred to, but rather the essential oils, mercury, alcohol, and the salt of the plants. Then fire, water, air, earth, the elements. This collection of symbols exclusively relates to the concept of gold. This means that the works have been coded. When I was reviewing the Paracelsus formulas to be able to apply them, I was almost driven to despair. I actually spent 15 years working on their practical application.
Und das ist mal eine Symbolsammlung allein für den Begriff Gold. Also so sind die Werke verschlüsselt. Und als ich die Paracelsus-Rezepturen aufgearbeitet habe, um die praktisch nutzbar zu machen, habe ich also wirklich an diesen Dingen fast das Verzweifeln bekommen. Also ich habe 15 Jahre gebraucht an dieser praktischen Umsetzung.
Here we have presented some original instruments from the time of Paracelsus to allow you to see the primitive conditions under which people worked. Alchemy was first and foremost the art of burning fuel to maintain constant temperatures. This was a decisive factor for these processes. You can imagine those times along these lines.
So ähnlich kann man sich die damalige Zeit vorstellen.
You're about to see why it is so much easier. Why when we were looking at those Instagram posts, it's like, oh yeah, it's like 3 things, you just plug them in. Because like even just maintaining a constant temperature, which is something you just plug in nowadays, was a whole thing. Come on, did the audio really drop out again?
There's no audio.
I think I just kicked out the speaker.
Now we're coming to the present, and the fact that there's some crazy people out there who are trying to reproduce these old formulas again. We're talking about a small group of people. Here, for your better understanding, on this picture, we're preparing a secret remedy of Paracelsus, an arcanum. This is one of the most important recovery remedies, the so-called aquavit. Aquavit consists of 40 ingredients which are first chopped up, as here. We can see how the plant substances are being collected, here on a tray. As mentioned before, we will have a total of 40 different substances in the end. We can see at the top left a separate bowl with honey. It will be also added to the formula. And at the bottom left, also separate because it is very valuable, saffron. Here the extraction thimble is practically being filled. We're working with a modern extraction method, the so-called sock slit extractor with a Liebig or straight condenser. At the bottom, the mercury has already been added. Also, bioethanol. We're of course using a modern furnace. This is how the whole extraction system looks. And while it is working, the extraction thimble is changing color more and more. It is being increasingly saturated with the active substances in the alcohol. And then lastly, the flask is being emptied. The liquid is kept accordingly, with the remains of the plants not being thrown away. This is what is so special about alchemy compared with homeopathy or phytotherapy. During the production process, meaning when we have made the tincture, we don't simply throw the remains of the plants away. Instead, we burn them to ashes. In other words, we wring them out one last time. 2 Bunsen burners are used to produce the required heat. Here you practically have the salt of the plants.
Alchemie gegenüber der Homöopathie oder Phytotherapie im Produktionsprozess, wenn wir also die Tinktur hergestellt haben, dass wir die Pflanzenrückstände nicht wegwerfen, sondern diese werden eingeäschert. Also nochmal ein letztes Mal ein Ausbringen. 2 Bunsenbrenner, um die nötige Hitze zu erzeugen.
However, both elements are still combined, namely the water-soluble and the water-insoluble salts, and they're being filtered off by having the whole residue filled with distilled water, whereby the water-insoluble salts will of course remain in the filter, and the water-soluble salts will drop off in a clear liquid.
Again, if you've taken my oil-making classes, you've seen sort of another side of these exact same principles being applied just for the oil fraction of it. So I intend to keep watching this, but I definitely want to get feedback from you guys. Make sure you guys are digging it. I see the viewership's up, so at least somebody's digging it. If you're new, welcome. Thank you for checking out the channel. If you're checking us out on Twitch for the first time, please do not forget to throw us a follow. If you're checking us out elsewhere, give it a like. Here we go.
Salze mit hängen und die wasserlöslichen Salze tropfen ab in einer klaren Flüssigkeit. Also das, was im Filter
What remains in the filter is the caput mortuum, the dead head or worthless remains that I already mentioned before. And at the bottom, there is this crystal clear liquid. The water is now evaporated again, with the salt of the plants remaining, salsalis. To the left we see the mercury, in the foreground the sulfur, and to the right, at the back, the plant salt, these 3 elements. However, the formula is not yet finished. Rather, we will now be using potassium bitartrate. Although I call myself a herb, I can still separate any metal. That's an original quote from Paracelsus regarding potassium bitartrate. Potassium bitartrate crystallizes and creates deposits in wine casks that have been filled with wine for decades. And this potassium bitartrate is being pounded here, setting in motion a highly poisonous process. The vapors of tartarus from potassium bitartrate are really extremely harmful. That is why we're also leaving this place. Now, exactly the same process repeats itself. In this manner, we obtain the salt of tartarus. Then it is washed through a filter again. In our formula, we will continue to use the water-soluble salts from potassium bitartrate. In this case, all these things are then mixed.
In diesem Fall. So, die ganzen Sachen werden dann gemischt.
And we've now reached the final process in this formula, the production of aurum potabile, the cold liquefied drinkable gold. Here we use the Gosa gold, which is chipped in arduous handwork, as you can see. Everything is then put into a flask. An acidic combination is then added to release the gold. It looks like this. This acid is then evaporated, a process which is known as sweetening in alchemy. Bioalcohol is continually added and then evaporated again. This has to be done at least 3 or 4 times, and here is the result. To make the whole thing bioavailable, cinnamon oil is added. Thus, each metal has a specific essential oil assigned to it again in alchemy. Cinnamon oil is therefore added here and filled up again with alcohol.
Zugeordnet in der Alchemie. Also hier wird Zimtöl reingegossen, wieder mit Alkohol aufgefüllt, abfiltriert.
Then filtered off. And, ladies and gentlemen, this now is the finished aurum potabile according to Paracelsus. It is of course then mixed together with all the rest. Here we have the final stage of the production process. The maturation process. This takes place over many weeks, with an arrangement like this that is open at the top. In former times, alchemists would refer to this process by saying that they were putting the medicine in the dun. This meant that in former times, with 37-degree body temperature, they didn't have the means of regulating the temperature in the furnace accordingly. That is why they would constantly add fresh dung simply to maintain this body temperature.
That's what the poop is for. It was not to break things down. It's inside a vessel. I'm glad I told you guys I wasn't sure, and I'm glad we're watching this video.
Everything is then bottled, and that was it. If anyone is interested in these processes, I've written a booklet containing these formulas. I decided to use a novel for this purpose, even though I'm not a novelist, just to cover my back legally. The book authentically describes how I became interested in alchemy. I blame this on Manfred von Ardenne, the German physicist and inventor. At the time, I was involved in inducing a state of anesthesia, a loss of bodily sensation, in patients together with him. At first, we were using much higher temperatures, where we had to induce a loss of consciousness, which is why we use general anesthesia. I belonged to his team. One day he approached me and said, "Listen, I'll administer vitamin E and magnesium and what have you to the therapy and hypothermia. There has to be something else which we can use as a cancer drug." Well, he had a friend in West Germany, a physicist, Herr Rosenkreuzer, and he told him, yes, the old alchemists. And then he sent me on my way. That was what started it. Unfortunately, he no longer lived to see the end of this work. For all intents and purposes, yes, he was the one. The word magic contains elements of the word image, which once also meant the act of appearing or being visible. Paracelsus worked magic according to the teachings of the West. However, what we are experiencing today is all from the East. Qigong, yoga, everything is from the East. Yet, what are our Western traditions? Numerous accounts of Western teachings have been destroyed by the Church. The only intact Western school of thought remaining today is the Jewish Kabbalah. Kabbalah means that which is received, i.e. an inner knowledge that has been passed down from sage to student. Paul spoke in the Bible, things which the eye has not seen and the ear has not heard, and which have not entered into the heart of man, these things God has prepared for those that love him. End of quote. Christ added, think not that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have come not to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. End of quote. The magician works in silence. People who want to be convinced of Hermetic teachings lack the necessary maturity for these teachings. A Hermeticist who studies metaphysical principles must also understand and observe the universal laws and logical relationships of natural science. These universal laws apply likewise to all mankind, to nature and the universe itself, whereby they relate equally to physical, astral, and subtle bodies. Paranormal magic thus represents the quantity and mysticism the quality in the perception of an object or a process. There are thus no properties without force, or forces without properties. Knowledge certainly cannot be equated with wisdom. While knowledge depends on the intellectual mind, wisdom is something that the individual must create for himself through practical, honest work. Here the degree of wisdom we can achieve is dependent on an individual's maturity and development. Yet for those who solely rely on knowledge, wisdom will forever remain beyond ordinary human understanding. The magician, using supernatural means, thus uses the universal pictographic language. This approach leads to a special worldview, where the paranormal magician consciously experiences himself as the master of his destiny. By contrast, the way of the Church is that of sainthood. This has as many systems as there are religions, with the spiritual path being the path of perfection, in the Hermetic sense. It never leads to solitude. Rather, it takes place wherever destiny places the individual. That is where the true magician works on his own development. This happens all the while without his environment noticing him. Thus, in all modesty, he will have no part in showing his level of maturity to the outside world. Quite to the contrary. If anything, he'll want to conceal it to have his peace from nosy and immature people. While on his way, the magician will want to gain an understanding of the perfection of the universal laws. Here he will realize that, literally speaking, good and evil are but religious concepts. In reality, both the positive and the negative principle are necessary, as the one cannot exist without the other. He will thus turn to the good principle, while never condemning the negative principle. The magician will learn to control the negative principle simply because the so-called creator has created nothing that is unnecessary. Only only adepts who understand and respect the universal laws in their absoluteness can also make use of the universal languages which everyone can understand when communicating with human beings, animals, plants, and beings of other orders. To communicate cosmically and to devote oneself to honest work are the goals of paranormal magic. From a mystic point of view, we distinguish between three bodies of man: the physical body, which today's medicine is coming to know better and better; the etheric body, meaning man's subtle body, with its energy channels, energy centers, and its aura, which is also reflected in the concept of charisma. One will search in vain for acupuncture meridians in the purely material realm. The third body is the subtle body, which contains the patient's consciousness. This awareness of the self is supported by three pillars, namely the will, the intellect, and the emotions. Should only one of these three pillars begin to shake, the individual's self-awareness will break down, meaning that the patient will suffer a mental disorder. From a Hermetic point of view, the Trinity of the mind requires us to be mindful of quantity and quality. The quantity of the will lies in its willpower, and the quality, of course, in its content. With the intellect, quantity corresponds with the ability to concentrate one's thoughts, and quality with the ability to think clearly and act intelligently. With the emotions, this corresponds with how deeply felt and profound our emotions are, and of course, with the content of these emotions. All of these quantities and qualities can have a correspondingly constructive or destructive effect. Many of these things were lost when we disconnected today's natural sciences from the humanities. Yet our thinking only functions well when concepts are clearly defined and used accordingly. The definition is, so to say, the content of the concept. Already when bringing up our children today, we often lack the time to explain the meaning of what we're teaching. Paracelsus wrote that it's important that therapists continue to learn. Here he set the following rules. The first rule is lifelong learning, since art is long and life is short. To quote the ancient Greek physician Hippocrates, those who think that they know it all have failed to understand what it's all about. The second rule is to show respect for the knowledge and experience of others. The physician should not only learn what he needs to do and know for his work from schools of higher learning, but also occasionally from old women, gypsies, wizards, vagrants, old peasant folk, and the like, because they have more knowledge of these things than all schools of higher learning together. End of quote. This requires a person to set out on travel for several years and leave his studies behind. I'm quoting again. Because no one can become a master while staying at home, and because no one has his master hiding behind the warm glow and comfort of a kitchen stove. Not all these skills are to be found in one's home country. Rather, they're to be found distributed throughout the entire world. End of quote. The third rule referred to the way of life. On the one hand, it should be modest, while on the other hand, it should also be in harmony with the cosmic laws. Even if we don't manage to abide by this rule immediately and perfectly, that is not decisive. Much more important, according to Paracelsus, is that we should at least aim at doing so. In doing so, we should avoid any one-sidedness and extreme behavior. The fourth rule, according to Paracelsus, is experience. Since only the total amount of experience of each physician will make a master of him in his chosen field one day. How does a therapist acquire this knowledge? The first way is to enter into contact with the spiritual world and search for one or more competent contacts among the non-material spiritual beings in order to get those questions answered which were left unanswered during.
So he just crossed a big gap there. I don't know if you guys crossed that gap with him. He just rounded the corner from talking about medicine and speaking as a medical physician, and now he's talking about spiritualism. Surprise is that's why we're all here. We will continue.
During one's private studies. That's asking a bit much. Paracelsus wrote about this as follows. This is why you should mind your inner garden, because whatever way inner man has been made, he need only listen to his inner voice speaking to him from without. Then he will learn what no one can teach him, and everyone will be amazed because of him. End of quote. He refers to Hildegard von Bingen as an example who acquired her medical knowledge in a dream. In this connection, the most important pillar which supports all others is virtue. Without virtue, all diligently collected insights and accumulated knowledge is but built on sand. This is where the reasons why someone chooses to become a healer or physician play a major role. According to Paracelsus, they can be decisive for whether someone is a good or bad doctor. The virtue must of course be conveyed, as Paracelsus writes in the book Paragranum. Either a person was born with virtue and abilities, or the therapist had a good teacher who taught them, or otherwise the third and most important way of conveying them would be like if this was his calling by God. I would like to quote Paracelsus again. It's the works that make the master and doctor, not emperors, not popes, not faculties, not privileges, or a school of higher learning. No physician has emerged from a school of higher learning, nor has someone left such a school that would have been able to explain the causes of the least of illnesses with real knowledge. End of quote. Only one's own charitable efforts are the basis of healing. According to his own words, Paracelsus treated the poor without pay or only for room and board. Paracelsus summarized the most important virtues of a healer as follows: humility, brotherly love, optimism, and submission to God. I quote as follows: you must have an honest and upright and a strong and true belief in God with all your mind, heart, senses, and thoughts, full of love and trust. End of quote. Begin of quote. We have no one who teaches us, and no one who knows and recognizes the herbs of his own accord. He must have received his knowledge from others, from those who are more or different than mortals. End of quote. In other words, we must clearly cultivate a purposeful contact with the spiritual world in order to acquire knowledge of things that no living mortal can know. The second way of acquiring knowledge is by studying the traditions of our ancestors. However, this method includes many possible errors when we misconstrue what our forefathers were saying. This is why you should test the practicality of your research knowledge yourself. This also allows you to make new discoveries by chance during your practical work. It is precisely these fortuities which constitute the third way of acquiring knowledge according to Paracelsus. The fourth way of acquiring knowledge is by being in touch with existing elemental beings. This is another concept which has been completely lost today. The fifth way is by studying chiromancy. The fifth way is by studying chiromancy. This means that we should look for certain external properties that a medicinal plant possesses. For example, mistletoes grow as parasites on trees and draw on their lifeblood. In doing so, mistletoes are so ruthless that they actually destroy their own host and thus also themselves. It is precisely this property that mistletoes possess which is there for all to see. Yet it is precisely for this reason that mistletoes are one of the most valuable therapeutic agents for treating cancer. The sixth way is by studying the physiognomies or substances. In so doing, you can infer the effect of a substance inside an organism from its outer appearance. Here I would like to remind you of the effect of mercury as a light, volatile metal. This is exactly what the people are like that we treat with it, light-footed and superficial. Paracelsus did not always think that a doctor was needed to heal someone. To quote him, the outer healer will only step in after the inner healer has given up, when he begins to doubt and tires. End of quote. In this sense, prophylaxis means nothing more than that you should protect your inner healer so that he can do his job as thoroughly as possible. Paracelsus writes further, if nature would only be protected, it would heal all illness of its own accord, since it knows best how it must heal. The doctor cannot know this, and thus his task is only to protect nature. End of quote. It is only after the inner doctor does not know what to do next that an outer doctor will have to step in and apply all necessary 5 therapy methods together. Since Paracelsus' worldview rests on the teachings of Hermes Trismegistos, who is considered to be the founder of Hermetism, one of the main objectives is to get the patient back into harmony with the cosmic forces. This can also be done with elaborate and highly effective remedies referred to as arcanums, meaning a main remedy such as aquavit, whose production we have just seen. One of the reasons why the vow of silence arose among Hermetics was because they were being persecuted by the church. Knoweth, desireth, dareth, and hold thy peace is thus one of the first tenets of Hermetism. Particularly the Benedictine order used this knowledge very early in their monastic medicine. Paracelsus wrote copious amounts of medical and philosophical works. In 1559, all of his works were put on the Index Librorum Prohibitorum. As a consequence, the publication or possession of his works was forbidden under threat of death. Even so, in 1585, the Archbishop of Cologne commissioned the physician Johann Huser to summarize and publish the works of Paracelsus. Of interest here are also the works of Jacob Böhmen and Giordano Bruno, as both men of letters were students of the teaching of Paracelsus. Mankind is limited by three forces according to Paracelsus. They are old age, disease, and death. Particularly disease points to the shortcomings of man and to his longing for health, harmony, and a feeling of security. In his writings, for Paracelsus, disease and disaster are siblings. Sickness is not caused by the imbalances of juices, as almost all physicians believed during his age, but rather the imbalance of juices is only the effect of an illness. Only when the milieu of a patient has already been weakened will disharmonies arise in the juices, or will he be attacked by pathogens. Paracelsus thus sees the cause of illness metaphysically. In his book, Paramirum, Paracelsus wrote that there are only 5 causes of all illnesses. He called these the 5 entia, or 5 levels on which we fall ill. To cite Paracelsus, take note, there are 5 entia which create and cause all illness, end of quote. This means, for example, that there are 5 causes of a common cold, and not only one in the form of viruses as is being claimed today, to cite Paracelsus again. Then knoweth that there are 5 kinds of pestilences, not with regard to their nature, their substance, their shape and character, but rather with regard to their origin, irrespective of how they may express themselves later. There are, for example, 5 kinds of jaundice, 5 kinds of fever, 5 kinds of cancer, and 5 kinds of every sickness, end of quote. Paracelsus referred to ens as being the entity, the origin, the being of something. To cite Paracelsus, which has an unlimited power over the body, end of quote, meaning that something immaterial is initially present, which later brings illness upon the visible and tangible physical body. The founder of homeopathy, Samuel Hahnemann, said something similar. Diseases are dynamic disturbances of our spiritual well-being in emotions and activities. They represent immaterial disturbances of our mental condition, end of quote. The 3 physical causes refer firstly to the heavenly entities, or the ens astrale, as Paracelsus said. I am quoting, the power and the essence of the heavenly bodies and their control over the body, end of quote. This also includes environmental factors such as radioactivity, earth radiation, and water veins, which are also under the influence of the heavenly bodies. The second physical cause, the poisonous entities, or ens veneni, refers to our nutrition and excretion and the toxins which the body either produces itself as end products through its metabolism, or which affect it from the outside. If the body cannot eliminate these poisonous substances sufficiently, this will result in inner putrefaction according to Paracelsus. This in turn can lead to all kinds of diseases. The third physical cause, the natural entity, or ens naturale, is the nature or disposition of each individual, meaning has core values and tendency to act in a certain way. Paracelsus writes about this. If our own body is making us sick through its confusion and by it damaging itself, end of quote. He refers to the psychosomatic causes as ens spiritual and describes them as follows. The spirits that make our body sick, end of quote. Along with the psychosocial factors, Paracelsus also considered it to be quite realistic that sickness could be caused by the practicing of magic. Paracelsus called another cause of sickness taking effect on the spiritual level ens dei, which essentially refer to divinely ordained causes. Other philosophies would prefer to refer to this as being a karmic burden. Aside from the last 5 mentioned causes of illness, Paracelsus does not allow for any other causes, and he writes about this as follows. The 5 influences apply to each individual. Anyone forgetting some of them and referring to others would most likely be a false prophet. He writes that in this respect we should always assess all 5 aspects together. The logical consequence for Paracelsus is that all 5 causes also, of course, require 5 different therapeutic approaches, all of which should also be administered together. In this regard, he writes, I must bring it to your attention that the illnesses should not be treated as if they come from one source, but rather you should use a different method depending on the 5 entia. End of quote. These 5 therapeutic approaches correspond with the 5 types of doctors distinguished by Paracelsus. The first type of doctor is well known to us. He's the allopath. He treats the symptoms with the corresponding antidote. Fever is suppressed, pain is killed with drugs, etc. Paracelsus writes about this type of doctor. Whoever thinks he can heal warm with cold and dry with humid hasn't understood what sickness is all about. End of quote. Because a mere suppression of symptoms will never lead to the complete cure of an illness, it will bring the illnesses back and allow other afflictions to arise. End of quote. Arcana and illnesses, they are contraries. Arcanum is health, and sickness is contrary to health. The two repel each other. Each will repel the other. The second type of doctor calls himself a specifici. He has intimate knowledge of the mysterious being, the specific properties of a medicine, and he has tested them on himself. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the homeopath. Cure like with like. All mysterious forces of the things will heal. Treat the effective diseases in the same manner as it was caused. End of quote. Only use things of the same kind for related things. Cold will not overcome hot, and what is hot will not overcome what is cold. When we're coming down with a disease, the treatment must be given with whatever caused the illness. End of quote. The third type of doctor will look at what is connected to the sickness, and is called the characterales. As he does not need any material substances as a medicine, he is above the duality of sympathy and antipathy. The name of this doctor clearly shows that he heals through his inner insight. Here it is simply the charisma and the inner wisdom of the doctor that produces the healing effect of the patient, meaning that his presence is decisive. He must have lots of empathy and experience. The fourth type of doctor is the spirituales. He heals solely with magic. He converts the energy of the heavenly bodies. This transformed energy can then be used as a cure. The knowledge required for this is conveyed by spiritual beings who he contacts in order to learn and to heal. People do not learn this high art of healing from other people, but rather exclusively from their own close ties to the spiritual world. And now, finally, the fifth type of doctor. He is called fidelis. He is a master of Hermeticism, and he has absolutely no religious doubt. His mind has become a vessel through which the world spirit operates. This doctor is entrusted with the task of opening the senses of the patient for the higher powers. This applies particularly to patients who for some reason or another have lost their sense of basic trust in themselves and the world. And, as you well know, this happens mainly in the first years of a person's life, where the small child practically approaches all people expecting a positive reaction. When something then happens, something dramatic, this doesn't affect a grown-up in the same manner. For example, if a child is admitted to a hospital without one of his parents being there, or similar things, those are traumatic turning points in an individual's life. This can lead to the person losing his sense of basic trust. This makes it very difficult for conventional psychology to act, meaning that any traumatization that occurs before the fourth year of one's life represents a very difficult chapter. And here, through this fifth type of doctor, Paracelsus practically points to the importance of re-establishing basic trust. Also through faith, because otherwise many children will become addicted patients. Irrespective of whether to alcohol, narcotics, or medicine, officially induced by psychoactive drugs, those are the 5 types of doctors, according to Paracelsus.
So that was the whole video. I have dropped the link in the chat. I've also dropped it in the Discord. So, you know, if you don't have to go through this whole thing to find the chat log later and you don't want to take the link down now, it's in the Discord. That's what's happening. So with all that said, it corrected me on all my bullshit, which I'm really grateful for. And moreover, I think we all know quite a little bit, or you might say quite a lot more about alchemy. Now, naturally, I looked into the book that he described. It is only available in German. So if you're watching this video and you're into occultism and you are semi-fluent to fluent in German, I'll let you, boy. We'll get you a copy of that book, and we'll get to work. With that said, who's ready to move into meditation here? Who wants to, I can leave YouTube videos on while I go away, but I got to get my meditation and my prayer in, because I'm somewhere between those fourth and fifth paths that Paracelsus described. I really dug that video. That one I previewed it. I had it up in the browser. I hadn't watched the whole thing. I saw that it had 1,800 views, so I didn't know. It exceeded my expectations. More people should see it, so hopefully you guys get to check that out more, share that more. I just looked at the time and it was 1:44:44. So, with that said, ready for meditation and prayer, says NyQuil. That's what's up, my man. Cool. Meditation for today. Any thoughts, any direction, any ideas? I know that I'm kind of just feeling, I'm kind of just feeling breathing meditation, but I had a really late night. So that's because I'm lazy. That's because I'm lazy, because then I don't have to say anything. But I will let you guys pick. You sat through not only about an hour of video, but also about 20 minutes of me messing around with the sound. So you deserve whatever you want. I owe you guys at least that much. Breathing?
Feels like we haven't done breathing in there.
Cool. NyQuil's being easy for me. Now, all right. So Solomon, since you're in the room and I don't have to deal with the lag and you, which breathing one? Where do we? Oh, Wim Hof? You mean?
That was the last breathing I remember.
I'm not gonna do Wim Hof.
We don't need to do Wim Hof.
There's no way I'm doing Wim Hof.
I really like the one that Chris did.
That was Wim Hof.
The 2-minute hold. Yeah.
Yeah, that was Wim Hof. Yeah, we're not doing that one.
We could do Carl's reverse breathing.
I don't want to do reverse breathing. I mean,
it works.
Yeah, but I'm not in no way qualified to guide that. All right, I guess we could just do a Wim Hof video. Let's do that. There must be a YouTube video with Wim Hof breathing.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
Wim Hof breathing. How many rounds, you guys? Do you want to do? We haven't done it in a while, so we do 2 or 3?
Is there 2? I'm not seeing 2.
Wow. You just got to type it in. 2 rounds. This is a guided meditation. Oh, no, this is it. 30 breaths, around 2 minutes hold. Breathe in and hold 10 seconds. This is it. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Perfect. Pausing. Oh, there's music. So we're dealing with the music. Okay. So, NyQuil, we did this with Chris a bunch. It is work. It is pretty fun. For those who are doing this for the first time, I am by no means a certified instructor in this. But the whole trick, as Chris taught us, is circular breathing, kind of keeping that circle going in your breathing. Is that explaining that well?
Definitely.
And kind of filling up from the bottom. Getting rid of it. Filling up, getting rid of it, all that.
Also, when you do your hold, to be a bit below halfway. To not hold with a full breath.
Yeah. Don't hold with a full breath, yeah. And then hold with this much of your breath full. And then you kind of slowly let it out as it gets too full. You can let a little out and hold till it builds up again and let a little out and hold. So if you feel lightheaded, dizzy, uncomfortable, feel like you're going to die, your brain's going to explode, your heart's going to break, this is not going to work out for you in a beneficial way, please stop immediately. You should talk to a doctor before you do this. Nobody should try any of this stuff. I'm a trained professional. This is purely for educational and religious purposes.
And entertainment.
Any entertainment is purely secondary. All right, here we go.
We are built to be able to prevent and heal from diseases.
Okay, this is a little fucking intense. Okay, I can't do that right now. I'm sorry, you guys. That was too much. Let me see, like 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 4 rounds, 4 rounds, 2 rounds. Okay, this looks like more what I'm looking for. Let me see. Okay, this is exactly what I'm looking for, you guys. Here we go. It doesn't have the whole thing. I find that very distracting.
Yeah, that was a lot.
That was like too much if I have to focus on not breathing. If I'm gonna feel like I'm suffocating, I don't want it to be like that. Okay, here we go. We'll do this again. So we're gonna start by taking a deep breath. Here we go.
Welcome to Take a Deep Breath. Today's breathing exercise is deep breathing using your nose. This is a slightly quicker breathing exercise where we will breathe in for 2 seconds and breathe out for 2 seconds. This will be done rhythmically and guided to keep you on track. This exercise will consist of 2 rounds. Each round will have 30 breaths, and there will be a 90-second hold in between each round. Don't worry if you can't hold the entire amount. Just do whatever feels comfortable for you. So sit back, relax, take a few normal breaths.
This
in
is
now,
definitely easy mode. This is what we
begin.
want right now.
In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. In through the nose, 2. Out through the nose, 2. Final breath in and final breath out. Breathe fully out, empty those lungs and hold. Okay, take a deep breath in through your nose and hold for 15 seconds. And let go through the nose. Okay, let's get on to round number 2. In through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2, in through the nose, 2, out through the nose, 2. Final breath in and final breath out. Breathe fully out, empty those lungs and hold. Okay, take a deep breath in through your nose and hold for 15 seconds. And let go through the nose. In a moment my voice will stop and the music will continue, so just sit back, relax, you've done everything you need to, you're exactly where you need to be. Enjoy the state you've created, and we'll see you on the next video.
was a good one.
That was really good.
It was a good one.
I think the accent definitely was a plus.
You know what I want to do next time? I want to do the Joe Dispenza one next time. 'Cause that's what I was trying to remember towards the end there, and I couldn't remember it perfectly. So we'll do that one from the source. I did drop the link to that one in the Discord, as I said about everything else. We'll go into actually before we go into prayer, one more thing I want to cover for everyone. Just some of the, because you guys are our core community, you're here rocking with us every day. We want to share what we're working on. Some of this stuff I've announced part of. Some of this stuff will be surprise. But we want to share it with you first. First and foremost, coming Friday, these t-shirts. They're my Archangel Michael symbol. It's a symbol I created to use to work with Michael. The sword symbolizes Michael. It says Michael in Hebrew. The snake, of course, obviously, is the serpent. The head is cut off, removed from the serpent, and it's dropping the 2 drops. There's a whole description of it on my Instagram. There will be also in the Discord, actually, if you want to know more about that symbol. Everything I'm about to show you is going to be available first and foremost on the Discord. So if you're interested in any of this stuff, you're going to be able to get it on the Discord before anyone else. It's all limited drop, so get it on the Discord. Get in on the Discord is what I'm saying, if you want to get it on the Discord. And every single purchase, like all, obviously some amount goes to the shirt and the printing, but it all goes to supporting the temple, to doing this stuff, paying back, the loan I got to build the studio and all that other stuff. So we certainly appreciate it. If you would like something like that, we are very excited to share it with you. Some other stuff we're doing for the first time in a very long time. I'm releasing a very small amount of oils, spiritual powders on the slate for release this week. My handy dandy schedule.
Almost an actual slate.
Road opener powder.
It's good stuff.
It will be, we're just waiting on the bergamot to come in. I have some bergamot. I may, if the stuff I ordered doesn't ship from the West Coast, I'm just going to work on that. But we are going to be putting it on sale on Friday. All this stuff's going to go on sale on Friday. First on the Discord and then on the Instagram. But it's only like 30 pouches of powder. Right? We're going to have 30 pouches of road opener powder. I do have the first in my series of Michael classes that if you back me on Kickstarter, you already have a ticket to. Don't worry, you're going to be getting an email about that. But if you haven't, it'll be your chance to get in on it. Also, pretty excited to announce that for those who missed out on everything in the Kickstarter and you want to get in on the scouts, those Indian head pennies that we use for law keep away work, that we use to kind of keep us concealed from those who would be hunting for us, so to speak. I'm going to be doing those in 9-packs for the first time at like less than half the price that they used to be. So really excited to be bringing that stuff out. You can get in early on all that stuff by following on the Discord. Also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram at holymountain.co. With all that stuff said, thanks for hanging in there while I brought you guys up to speed on all that. Let me usher us into prayer and release you all to this day that has now dragged on pretty long, but heck, I don't mind it. After all those technical difficulties, I think it was worth the wait. So with that said, let's assume the position. If you haven't joined us for prayer before and don't know what this is about, don't worry, it's not as bad as you think. I promise you. Why are we putting our hands up like this? You know what? Stick around and I'll tell you next time. I'll tell you that. There is a reason. There's 4 or 5 reasons. I usually repeat them, but 4 reasons. I usually repeat them every time, but that's unnecessary. So let's do this one. Do it like this. Just take up space. Get big. Get big. If you got to do this because you're in a public place, that's cool. Do this one. I'll do this one this time.
It's good for you. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, it's good for you. Proven scientific. Good for your hormonal balance, your body, all that good stuff. There are other reasons, but let's just go with that. That is one of them. Let's start by taking a deep breath into our center. And feel the capacity of our lungs to do that at our command. And realize that generally they do that without our command. They just do that. They just breathe for us. and our heart beats for us, our bones and our muscles grow and repair for us. The various passageways of our bodies open and close in time at their own rate, without us intervening, without us doing anything, without us asking for it. Our brains function, we store memories, we recall memories, we perceive, we understand. All that happens spontaneously without us having to try. It's not like learning to ride a bike that we had to figure it out, it just happens. Our fingers and toes work, we can walk, we can balance. All these functions are innate. Once our bodies grew to the point where they were developed enough, we had them. And we had them at our command. And we did nothing for them. They were gifts. They were gifts first and foremost from the Creator, the first cause of the universe. They were gifts first and foremost from everything, or second and second most, and subsequently, from every subsequently cause after that first cause, on down and through each of our ancestors and our entire ancestral lines to ourselves. And so we embody this chain of causes. We are the effect of effects. And all of this that we have that we don't have to create, that we take for granted, is the result of all those causes, is the contribution of every single one of those causes from the first cause. Both our physical, our spiritual, our emotional, our intellectual, all of our gifts, all of our blessings are the culmination. We are the culmination of culminations. And at the same time, we are the cause of causes. We are the funnel, the point from which to which everything leads, and from which everything must come. And realizing that at that point, as the now in between the past and the future, we are connected with all of those, everything from which we have come, and everything which will come from us, physically, intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, all of these ways. And in that place of connection, let us feel that connection. Let us submit to it. Let us resonate with it. Let's open and soften. And if we feel any area where we are resistant to it, where it doesn't dynamically interface, let's just notice that. And in noticing it, just soften, release, open, and trust. Trust that connection that led to you and to which you lead. And opening in that trust, in that vulnerability, let's feel grateful, truly grateful, amazed, blessed to have all of this at our disposal, behind us and before us. And in that true heartfelt gratitude, let's feel that connection. And in that connection, we can draw down. We can pull into ourselves more of that. We can pull more of every bit of that essence and blessing that comes into us. We can embody that, pass it through us, cycle it through us. And then we can project it out to everything coming from us, everything surrounding us. We can enshrine ourselves in that resonant blessing, that flowing forth. Each thing proceeding from the next, proceeding from the next, proceeding from the next, back to the original first cause. And in our place in that chain, when we become attuned, like part of a wave, like a wave of sound, we sing forth. And so let us sing forth our blessing to everything before us and after us in this chain. And let us all say, Amen. Well, cool, gang. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a wonderful day. This has been a really good one. 2 hours and 15 minutes. Thank you for hanging with me through the technical difficulties. I hope it was worth it in the end. Again, if you're trying to connect with the Discord and don't know how, make sure you're watching on Twitch, twitch.tv/VoodooMoses, and then down in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, sorry, that's where the follow and subscribe buttons are, which are important. Follow if you haven't followed yet. If you can subscribe, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you're already an Amazon Prime member, it is free. So that'll be down there in the bottom right of your screen under the video. If you are wanting to get on the Discord, under the video or to the side of the video, depending if you're on mobile or on desktop, you'll see a button that says Discord. Click that. That's our forum. A Discord is sort of like a chat community forum, and that's where all these links are and all that other good jazz. So I'm going to be releasing all this stuff on Friday, everything else like that. Actually, I think I'm going to release it to the Discord Thursday night. What do you think of that?
I think maybe we do midnight.
Yeah, Thursday night, midnight, we'll drop it on the Discord, and it's going to be Friday noon for everybody else. That's what we're going to do. So with that said, everyone, thank you once again. Of course, this recording and all the other recordings are going to be up on Twitch. If there's something you love today, go ahead and clip it out, right? That's an easy thing to do in Twitch. I will be developing a Twitch resource guide for a lot of the first-timers who are with us, because I'm a first-timer on Twitch, as you can see by how I struggle with the audio. So maybe that'll be helpful for the community to kind of help everyone participate as much as they want to. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. I bless you. I love you. I hold you in my heart.